Welcome to everybody. This is the first set of slides of the course in Practical Ethics for Bachelor students in the Communications module of the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management. The aim of presenting these slides to you is to give you a chance to listen to my voice and the slides at the same time, and to do so at your own speed of learning. Whether that is a good idea or not, I'm not sure. However, many students of the intakes before you told me that they liked the scheme, and so let's try it again. I try to speed up my language so that you can, by repetition, fix your own speed rather than having to wait until I'm done. As you can easily sense out, I'm not a native speaker, and my English is far from being perfect. I'm rather confident, however, that it is up to the task, and the task is to present you with arguments from ethics and to teach you how to deal with ethical problems, how to cope with them, and so on. Well, teaching is not really teaching. Teaching here is commonly shared training and discussion. So let's hope that we will have engaging and interesting discussions in class to prepare you for these discussions in class, or to let you repeat what has been said there in substance. These slides hopefully will help. As a consolation for all of us, the language of science is broken English, but let's not overdo it. So let's go into matters. The learning objectives are something we check on because we want to check on us as the people who are responsible for instructing you. Were we able to get across what we wanted to get across, or were we unable? Where were our failures and where our successes? So you may want to look at this your own when you go home. Where are we heading to concretely? I hope to train your ability to identify practical ethical problems in business in particular, and to present the pros and cons in a transparent form. I also hope that you will be able to communicate your own well-considered judgments, and that you will do so in a way that comprises general ethical views and the specifics of a concrete case at hand. And most of all, I hope that you will be able to do this in a coherent form. As you may have expected, there will be an exam, and this was indicated in the module description anyway. The exam will comprise 40 minutes. Its aim is to check on your ability, on your skills and your competences, not your morals. Who am I to check on your morals? Your morals are your morals and your responsibility. My responsibility is to train your faculties to argue and to present arguments in a coherent way. Well-considered judgments on practical ethical issues will be required, and you should be able to communicate them in your response to a practical problem with which we might. Here's the menu of what is to come. We start, as in any good menu, with appetizers. Then we turned to the central issue of shareholder versus stakeholder approaches. This is absolutely central in business ethics, but it would not take us a long time. It's a rather short thing. So we have some time, I hope, in this session to talk about cases. And some of the cases I believe are rather interesting. Other cases are in the script by Susanna Hahn and me, which has been handed out to you anyway. Then comes ethical method. This is, in a way, the core skill, and this will be taught by Susanna Hahn, who is certainly in Germany one of the leading, if not the leading expert on the reflective equilibrium method, since she has written her dissertation on it. So you'll get some first-hand training. Since her name is Chicken, translated into English, well, not really chicken, but anyway, Hahn. I call her sometimes Hoon, but that's a different story. You don't get it from the mouth of the horse, but you will get it in a very competent and interesting way. And then we'll turn to some very superficial knowledge of ethical theories. You can get that knowledge from other sources if you want. For instance, you could read William K. Frankena's book. It's a short book, but it will be much more than what we can present to you here. So let's turn to the appetizers and also look at the script for them. Appetizers from ethics, economics, and management will be presented, and we start with the appetizers from ethics. And there are basically two. One is the famous trolley problem, and the other one is drug. So let's turn to the appetizers from ethics. Moral philosophers nowadays are using experiments, but they use thought experiments rather than real-world experiments as would do economists. And I come to some experimental economics experiments because they are very interesting for understanding ethical orientations of real human beings. Here is the thought experiment of modern ethical theory, which may be the most important one, the trolley problem. It identifies the bare bones of a problem that also has been called should the numbers count. There's a trolley running down the tracks, and there is an actor who can switch the tracks. Assume that the actor is you. So what should you do if the trolley is running down the tracks? On the one track, there is one worker who cannot be warned. On the other track, there stand 5 workers who cannot be warned either. The 5 workers are switched on by nature. So if the trolley runs down the tracks, the trolley will unavoidably run over 5 workers. They will be run over by a bus, as the saying proverbially goes. Should you avoid that? Should you turn the switch? This is not an easy problem because turning the switch means that you will actively intervene into the course of affairs and thereby kill 1 worker to save the 5. That's unavoidable. So should you actively kill, or should you refrain to adopt this responsibility and thereby let it happen by your act of omission? This is deliberately formulated in a paradoxical way as an act of omission, but you also could say, should you kill by your omission the 5? To get a better handle on this, let's discuss the following variant of trolley. It's called drug. Either you can save 1 person with 5 units of a drug, This is a drug guzzler who needs all the 5 units. Or you can save 5 individuals with 1 unit each. But you can't save all 6. So you either save 1 or you save 5. Splitting up quantities will not help. So you should construct possible solutions, including some with probabilistic assignments by coins, dice, and so on. Do this yourself. But before you do it, just become aware of the following fact. It's the answer to this question. In the case of trolley, you cannot save the 5 without actively killing the 1. In the case of drug, you can do 3 things. Give the drug to nobody, give the drug to the 5, or give the drug to 1. The other alternatives don't make sense, at least it seems so. If you don't give the drug to anybody, you treat them all equally. Now think about lotteries that might treat them equally as well and the possible arguments. Leaving the preceding questions to in-class discussions, let's turn to appetizers from economics. The most famous one is the ultimatum game. We will use it to illustrate how ethical convictions and motives can influence practical behavior. Then we'll turn to so-called efficient markets and market efficiency and discuss the moral standing of free markets. Finally, we'll use so-called VCM mechanisms. Well, VCM is a shorthand for voluntary contribution mechanism, and these are classical dilemmas that we encounter when it comes to furthering the common weal. This is the game we have to discuss. There's a person A. Let's assume that is me, and I have 3 units of money, which I can give all to you. I also could give 2 units to you and keep 1. I could keep 1 and 2 and give 1 to you. And finally, I could keep them all and give you nothing. You are here when I gave you 3 units, and you have to say no or yes. If you say no, the upper N, then you get nothing and I get nothing. That's why it's called an ultimatum. You can say yes or no. If you say no, we both get nothing, you veto it. If you say yes, I get nothing as I assign to me and you get 3. So let's go down here where the arrow is now. I gave you 0 units. And again, you can say no, we both get nothing. Or you can say yes, then you give it all to me. If I give you 1 unit and you say yes, you get 1 unit and I get 2 units. If you say no, you get nothing and I get nothing. Finally, if I give you 2 and you say yes, you get 2, I get 1. If you say no, we both get nothing. A gets what is indicated first in the pair, B gets what is shown second in the pair, and there are the conditional assignments. what they get according to what I did. The basic idea is to eliminate all motives that could explain behavior except distributional ones. So what we do is we see to it that there are no personal relations and no shadow of the future. Say if you and I are engaged in an ultimatum game and we know each other, we know that we might meet outside the room again. So if I make a very small offer, you might resent it and slug me if I come out of the room, or I make a larger offer, but you still reject it, and I might want to be after you if we meet outside. So what we do is we put individuals in role A in one room, give them, say, envelopes in which there are two further envelopes, and the instruction to put in one envelope what A wants to keep and to put in the other envelope what A wants to pass on to B, and then put it back into the envelope, give it to another person. The person will transport it to the other room. The responder will look into the two envelopes and then note whether she or he accepts or rejects the offer. And that's done by the individuals in the other room, the individuals in the B role. Anonymity, as I said, is credibly assured in the ways I described, and it is commonly known that there is anonymity. All know that they will be anonymous. Nobody will ever expect to meet in person, and so if you kick me today, I can't kick you tomorrow. There are no causal consequences of the choice of the responder other than receiving the money or not. In such a situation, a purely extrinsically motivated responder should accept all positive offers. If it's 300 euro and I give you 1 euro and keep 299, you should accept them, because a little money is better than no money. Other causal consequences that could motivate you are ruled out by the construction of the experiment. The ultimatum game in sum has the following properties. A is the proposer, who can distribute 3 units. B is the responder, who can reject or accept what is on offer. Say up here, 3 units are passed on. J means that both get what the proposer proposed. In this case, it would be 0, 3. 0 for the proposer, 3 for the responder. And if the responder says no, then they don't get nothing. They both get nothing. This is designed to test the Homo economicus model, and the Homo economicus should behave the following way. Were the classical model true, the responder should never reject 1 unit, however small, even if it's 300 units in euros, she or he should accept 1 unit. Obviously, this is not how human beings behave. Here's a task for you. What do you think what happens if the second is not a veto player anymore, and thus the first actor becomes a dictator? Think of it. Think also about what is tested here. Would it matter if the proposer and the responder in the dictator game had earned the pie jointly before the sharing decision? So if the pie didn't fall down from heaven on them, would they behave differently? This is an interesting issue because the psychological situation, the intrinsic motivation will be different in a common sense way in both cases, but it shouldn't if people were only interested in the money and would run for the money and nothing else. How would joint production affect the share out in the ultimatum game? That is, if they would have to do something jointly in the first place, what would happen there? Would it affect the offerings and would it affect the acceptances or rejections? And in what way do you think? And again, you will get a handle on intrinsic motivation of a moral kind that comes on top of the interest in money that is relevant as well. What will happen if the response is delayed with more time to consider options? This is a very interesting question. People have this proclivity towards instant gratification. So the question is very interesting whether they will act otherwise in an ultimatum game situation than they would act without the delay. In fact, there is a strong effect if you let people do some clumsy task after the money is offered. And they have to cool off for, say, 10 minutes before they can show their response. Contrary to what many philosophers were suspecting, people in cool blood are typically much more selfish in their responses than they are if they are in a hot state. People in a hot state are, in a way, morally aroused, and this is actually confirming the theory of the famous English philosopher John Mackey of the last century, who was arguing that morals in our everyday life is rooted in what may be called the retributive emotions. If you want to see more of this stuff, go to the homepage of the MPE in Jena, the Strategic Interaction Group, and you will find a lot of experiments and you will find a lot of Werner Goetz and my stuff too, but that is just not the stuff you need to read. It's to specialize, but experiments are interesting, and Werner Goetz, after all, is the inventor of the ultimatum game. And so there are other appetizers from economics. We have dealt with the ultimatum game. Now we should go to the efficient markets problem. Here's my example. Imagine 30 people, 15 sellers and 15 buyers. The sellers get a yellow card with a dollar amount in their hand, indicating how much the seller must get to avoid losses. So if you have the yellow card and it shows, say, 5, then you must get at least 5 units to avoid a loss. You might demand, say, 7 to make a little profit, namely 2 units, if you sell your yellow card with a 5 on it for 7 units. The difference in general between the reservation price, that's the thing on the card, your cost or his cost, the seller's cost, and the sales price is the seller's profit. Buyers have a dollar amount noted on their red cards, just analogously, and that shows how much they can pay before making a loss. So if you have a card on which there is the number 10, you know you should never pay more than $10 for the contra party, because then you would lose. But if you pay only $6, you can keep the $4 that are the difference between the 6 you pay and the 10 on your card. If buyers buy cheaper, they make a profit. Turning a profit is the aim of both sides of the market. The amounts noted on the cards of the sellers are in ascending order 1, 2 to 15, and of the buyers 17 down to 3 respectively. So let's look at a figure. This figure shows the conditions. From the left up 17, you see the buyers ordered after their ability or according to their ability to pay. And from the left down corner, in ascending order, you see the sellers and their ability to sell for lower and then for higher sums. The equilibrium price is the price that is paid for the marginal trade. All trades that are made at this price will lead to the same social gain. The social gain is for the seller what is above the black line, and for the buyer which is above the black line, and for the seller what is below the black line. The same here, and so on. As you can easily see, by the trade per se, social gain is made. That's the green field. That's what they gain if they exchange. The others keep in the same situation as before. They can't trade. They don't find a partner with whom they could agree to the mutual benefit. But the people who are to the left of the equilibrium price, marginal trade, all gain. They make mutual gains. Trade is to the mutual advantage of those who are trading. Still, the other people might ask, what's in there for us? We don't gain here. We do not gain anything without. Here we have a case of perfect price discrimination. Some omniscient external observer knows who can sell at what price and who can buy at what price, and then pairs just the right people, so to say. In this case, all people have an interest in trade taking place, something that was not the case when trade was taking place at the equilibrium price without any specification of who is going to trade with whom. It wouldn't matter who is paired with whom as long as the equilibrium price is paid, and only those who can act as inframarginal traders are trading. Here, everybody gains, everybody is interested. All buyers win equally 1, and all sellers win equally 1 if they split the difference evenly. But we have multiple rather than a uniform price. Each trade has its own price. The total social welfare gain from trade in this case is 30. Compare that with the situation in the slide that we were discussing in the preceding case. At uniform market prices, the first 2 trades are already gaining 30 additional in value, and there are 37 for the other 6 trades. However, there are people who do not gain anything because they can't trade at the uniform price, whereas in this other thing they can in this second slide. we are already dealing with the big issues. The question of equity versus efficiency. The first graph showed efficiency. The second graph showed equity according to some notions of equity. Each is gaining the same amount from trade at the cost of price discrimination. Price discrimination can, of course, be an answer to the question of how to make all people interested in the market order. This is something that is bought at a very high efficiency loss. Price discrimination is regulation, and regulation costs a lot of money in the sense of gains foregone. On the other hand, it may be necessary to keep up the stability of the social order. People must, after all, accept the market order, the order in which trade can take place. If they don't accept it, if they overturn it, where is the ability of those who wanted to trade? A cheaper way may be to let them trade freely and to tax them. And there is still another big issue, namely that of freedom of contract versus imposing some kind of equality of outcomes. The liberal view on this is that you would support freedom of contract, at least the classical liberal view, not necessarily the social democrat liberal view of modern America, but the classical liberal view is to support freedom of contract and then to tax to redistribute. The non-liberal view is to insist on equality of outcomes, but there are certain conditions, for instance, perhaps in the case of minimum wages, when equality of outcomes may count more than anything else, because social order and its support may require it. So let's go on with our appetizers from economics. Let's turn to the famous dilemmas of cooperation. The most famous one is the following one, and most of you will have heard of it. It's the prisoner's dilemma. The interesting thing of the prisoner's dilemma is that it is practically the same thing as exchange. Assume there are two people who send their goods simultaneously, say over eBay. It's now not money against goods, but it's just an exchange of two goods. And they agree on the exchange of the two goods, and one sends them to the other and the other to the one. They do it at the same time. That means that none of them can make own delivery contingent on whether the other has already delivered. And if you go home and think about this for a moment, you will see that this is the same story as the one I'm telling you now in a much more stylized and bare bones way. There is a person A, and this person is the so-called role player. And there's a person B who is called the column player. The person A can play DA, that is, keep her good A that she is supposed to send on to the other person. It has to consider now what would happen if the other person would send her goods. So there's a person A, she has the quantity small a, and she keeps it rather than send it on simultaneously with the other guy. The other guy, the person B, has quantity B of the good that she holds, and she sends it. Then, obviously, Player A, person A, has both her own good, she kept it, even though she promised to send it, and the good of B. And this is clearly better than having only B. That is, if the person would have chosen to send her goods as she may have tacitly or explicitly promised, then her A would have been gone to person B. Consider again dA for the other case. Let us assume that the other person did not send on her stuff. What happens then? Well, if person A would have done CA, that is, sent her own stuff, then she wouldn't have her A anymore, and person B would have had the full set still, but that's just symmetrical. The important point is from the point of A that she wouldn't have anything had she sent it off, and the other defected. However, had A kept the good, did not do his part of the deal, then A would be better off than if A would have sent off her good. The same holds for B symmetrically. What does that mean? That means that the two of them will end up down here, because regardless of what the other does, it is always better not to comply with the promise. We have agreed to exchange A against B, small letters now, but if we don't keep to the agreement, then if the other keeps to it, we are better off, and if the other does not keep to it, we are better off as well. So regardless of what the other does, it's better not to keep to the agreement. That means we will end up with what we had before. However, we would both be better off in case of trade. We would be better off if the exchange would happen as agreed on. Because this is the whole point of the exchange. Person A prefers to have the small quantity B, and person B would prefer to have the quantity small a. Whereas the initial endowments were small a for capital A and small b for capital B. If you look at the rows and columns, you see that there is for both players an alternative to which another exists that is better regardless if they play C cooperatively. However, that is the condition for making both better off. So what we have here is both players prefer the exchange situation BA to the endowment or original situation AB. CC cooperation by both is possible in a one-off match, so both can be better off. However, this is the crucial thing, the rational realization of CC is impossible in one-off interactions without contract institutions, and that's the same thing as in the original ultimatum bargaining game. You really screen off anything of social relationships here that's one-off and they don't meet any time and whatever. The paradox, or the quasi-paradox, is that people could be made better off by not going for the higher payoff. Still, perhaps there is something they could do, and certainly they could introduce a police, a special exchange platform like eBay with a reputation mechanism and so on. what is really the crucial thing is that they might be doing well by doing good. If both, for instance, would have internalized a moral motivation structure, then they both might cooperate and in the end would succeed in trading. The invisible hand of self-interests leads into a situation to which another exists in which both are better off. So pure self-interest is not in their interest. The so-called Pareto improvement, that's an improvement that makes both better off, is possible only if they violate the fundamental principle of individual rationality, namely, never to choose an alternative to which an other exists that can make you better off regardless what else happens in the world. The two, A and B, are trapped by their rationality. They can't exchange, they can't go to the division of labor and all this because they are rational and know that they are rational in such a situation. And the great question is then, will morals get them out of the trap? And it can do so if morals leads them to a re-evaluation of their actions or the situation emerging from the actions. That is, they must evaluate CA-CB higher than DA-DB. If the moral can do this, then they will be doing well by doing good. And here you can see that morals is good for something. Still, can they trust in the morals of the other? And this is the question that never goes away. And again, eBay with its reputation mechanism is a very good model for what is going on. The preceding argument can be extended or generalized, and this is what the collective good mechanisms are about. The so-called voluntary contribution mechanisms are mechanisms that can put the situation just described into the lab. Assume there are n individuals, and each individual earns money according to the function indicated here. Pi is what the person gets in the end. AI is what she gets initially. Say AI is 10. The initial endowment. The person comes to the lab, she gets 10 units, and then she can pass on BI, then holding A minus BI of the initial endowment, and will get back from the others and herself whatever they put into the pot by the common pot by passing on B. Specific figures make this much clearer. Assume that lambda is 1/2, they get back 1/2 of whatever they put in the pot. And let's assume n is 4. Then you see the condition that each of them can give a sum between 0 and the initial endowment into the pot and then gets back from this something out of the pot, and so the final sum of money is determined. A dilemma will emerge whenever the condition down there is fulfilled. Well, that means that by putting in something into the pot, you get more back than you put in if everybody does so. Just assume for the sake of argument that Everybody puts everything into the pot. Then there are 40 units in the pot, and everybody gets half of it back, so everybody gets 20. That means that the people, though endowed, the 4 people with 10 initially, and this is in sum 40 for the group, earn as a group by cooperation and freely putting their money into the pot 80 units as a group, and each of them gains 10 over the initial 10, so each of them has a final payoff PI of 20. But, as you can easily say, whatever the others do, it's always better not to put your money into the pot. Again, if you put in nothing and keep your 10 and the 3 other people put in everything they have, then you keep your 10. They put in everything they have, so there are 30 in it. You get half of the 30 back, that is 15, and they all get 15 too. And so you are better off because you now have 10 plus 15 and they have only 15. Don't ask from where the additional money comes. This is obvious. It comes from the experimenter. Now you may say this is crazy, but it's not crazy because synergy and the effects of working together makes people more productive, and that's the whole point of the division of labor and the foundation of our wealth. So it's modeling in the laboratory what really keeps the world together and makes us work together. However, we always have an incentive to free ride, and that's modeled here. Again, morals may help us to get out of the trap. Free riding will be inhibited if you feel guilty, for instance, if you free ride. Okay, that can be tested in the laboratory. The interaction is repeated for a fixed number of rounds, and what you always see there, that participants who learn after each round of play will adapt to that. They see that others don't fully cooperate, and then results are always the same. Contributions are relatively high initially and then erode in the course of time. This actually also holds if you restart the thing. You let them play it for 10 rounds and then again for 10 rounds. And they always start with more and then go down. To get a better handle on it, you may try to do this. You may try to fill in the numbers. And if you are really serious, you think about this for a moment and then you only look at the solution here. Finally, you should go to the internet and you should read the article Morals and Markets from the journal Science, and we shall discuss this in the next session. Thank you for now. These were 50 minutes of your attention. I hope you have a good attention span. And this is what the course may have done to you.